Here with us is Jenny
Lucas, Vice Chair.
Garrett Levy, Chair.
John Racine,
And Charles Hastings, member.
why don't you,
And yes. I thought I saw her.
yeah, she's here.
And Becca Hastings is here. Hang your head in shame. Bob Freeze is with us. Thank you for joining. And we should start the discussion. So we have a few concerns regarding the purchase, and this is the feedback that we're getting from town residents. So one of the comments I hear, at least, is where are we going to get the money from? That's number one. Number two, a comment that one of the select board members made was if the town buys the land, it doesn't have to follow the town ordinances for recreation the way a conservation commission would or such. And we can discuss that, but I can quote what someone said in a minute. I don't have it in front of me. So we really have questions about how are we going to protect and preserve and conserve these 13 acres. One of the ideas that came up was to convert it, change it to greenbelt. And that's probably in the future. I'm just giving you some of the ideas that have been flying about. And I think we can start listening to other people's questions, comments.
The biggest question I got from the voters, what are we gonna do with it?
I think from the
So-
select board standpoint, we didn't think we should come up with any plan for what to do with it. We think the town should own it. It's 13 acres. That's the biggest piece of land that's available in town. Zone recreation. We think at a future time, we'll have open town meetings to discuss what might be done with it, what the townspeople would like to have done with it. We can't do anything without a vote of the town to spend money. So it's not like we could do something without the town's approval. The town has to vote.
So I agree with you,
Appropriate money.
Bob, as a board member on the Conservation Commission, I agree with you. But we all have to think, and we're gonna speak for the voter as well.
Sure.
So this question is not coming from John Racine, it's coming from people out there that I've spoke with, and they said, what are we gonna do with it? Why do I want to spend 250,000 or 100, whatever the 100,000, whatever the price is? Why are we gonna spend this money when we don't know what we're gonna do with it? So that's the question, whether they're gonna say yes to buying it or not, so
I
they
think
have some
part
idea.
of it is defensive. I think if the town owns it and all the townspeople have to vote on what gets done with it, then the town controls what happens there.
Right,
If the current owner sells it to somebody else. Presumably, they could do anything that's in the recreation
right,
purview.
So-
I hate to even speculate what those things might be, but
Yeah.
could be horses, could be skating rink,
I know, but we've got to have answers. Your select board, we're conservation, we've got to have answers for the town when they start
I think
talking.
the answer is we don't know what we're gonna do with it.
Right,
Yeah.
the answer is it's defensive, that it is buying to secure it,
Protect it.
protect it.
That's our, as a conservation member, that's my exact word is protect it, preserve it,
Yes,
okay? So when I say that to the voter,
right,
this is what we need to make sure they understand what we're saying, because they're all saying, what are we gonna do with it? They don't get,
For the
I'm
time
sorry.
being, it'll stay just like it is.
I'm sorry, but we're dealing with other people that want something for what they're gonna pay. And what I think they should get is to protect the land, to preserve it, just the way it is. But a lot of them don't think that way, so. I mean, I've been asking people and a different area, or when I'm skiing or when I'm talking with people, how do you feel about this? What's your concern? This is what they're telling me. So this is what I would like to be ready for as a select board member, as a conservation board member, to answer those questions.
Okay,
I
Mark
think
has some,
I think the answer is, in the short term, nothing is going to happen. It's going to remain the way it is. And in the future, there may be things that people propose to do or whatever, but those will be discussed, and the town has a say on whether something different in the future is done.
Right,
If the bottom line is, if we do not as a town buy it, right, and have it owned by the community, then whatever happens on it in the future, we don't have much of a say in. Other than if there's a site plan review or whatever it is before the planning board,
so,
that would be the only say that the community would have. And if it's an allowed use and they meet all of the requirements of a site plan review, right, for private development, then that private development's going to happen.
right. So this is, maybe we need to explain what recreational is. That's what it's zoned for. And it's also in a flood zone.
But I
This,
think those are.
this
those
is
are-
not- remember, this is not coming from
No,
me.
I understand, John,
Okay.
but I think the answer to that is those things that are allowed in the rec zone. Maybe those are what the town does with it, maybe not. Maybe it does get rezoned.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what's going to happen on that land. The only way to be certain of the town having any real control over what happens there is for the town to own it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a private developer, a private owner, if they're not like David, they want to do something with that land, they can request rezoning. Future town meetings may change the zoning of that land. You don't know what's going to happen there. No one does.
I
okay,
know, but when we go to a town meeting, you know that we're gonna have to explain what recreational is,
But I think
right?
okay.
I think the fact that it's the last piece. That's to me a no-brainer. This is it.
I agree.
This is absolutely it.
I mean, we want to protect it. That's why.
Yeah.
We're all in agreement. We're all in agreement that we want to protect it. The question is how best to protect it.
I think, again, the plan is here to short-term, just take possession of it for the town. And I think that's the logic of it. I spent quite a bit of time actually preparing for once for this meeting, reading up on the various ordinances, looking at the map and so forth. And what's permitted and what's not permitted. I was unclear when we talked about this last meeting, what constitutes recreational uses. And we have a lengthy 3 pages that define what's recreational uses. And there are many possibilities, some of which I would hate to see happen, some of which I would love to see happen. That's irrelevant because those uses cannot be implemented until such a plan is approved by the town. What strikes me as critical here is if the town does not purchase it, then some other private entity does purchase it and they come up with a proposal, a plan that I might hate, but which is allowed in the ordinance, that the planning board is going to be powerless not to approve it. If it abides by the limitations of what's in the planning board ordinances, then a private owner can come up and propose something which is way beyond what any of us would want to see happen to it.
Okay.
But then, again, I look at it from the planning board. They cannot refuse something, no matter how despicable it is. I think this has probably happened in the last few years. They can't turn it down unless there's something in the ordinance that says this is not allowable. And so I think the reason why we need to buy it is so that the town will have control over how it will be used.
Okay. Did you want to say something before I
Brooks, go.
comment?
I just have a point of clarification. I know in the budget hearing, it came up that someone said that it's a flood zone and kind of laughed at that, and everyone in the room heard that. But it's a very small portion of it that's in the flood zone technically. So I think that's important to educate people about, because that was
Right.
said at the budget hearing to a lot of people.
Okay, all right.
And then the other thing is, I think the answer to your question, John, is that you're buying an opportunity to decide what happens to it. You know.
Could you say that a little louder for the microphone? Please, really,
Yeah,
honestly.
I think what you're doing is you're just purchasing an opportunity, so that's what you're getting. So you're never gonna tell someone the right answer, because everyone has a different idea, but you're purchasing the opportunity to decide later.
Yeah,
Okay, David?
I have some say, apparently, in how the land will be used,
that's good.
in that I was invited to write contingencies into the deed.
Mhm.
Saying, this you can do, this you can't do. My attitude about that is, I'm one person. I've owned the land for only 3 years. Why should I have that power to say how the land can be used? So I say, I don't want to write any contingencies into this. I want to trust the select board that they will keep it recreational. Now, recreational, you understand, includes skeet shooting. I've had 2 inquiries from people who want to put horse stables in there. Okay, neither of those are ones that I approve of. But I think if the select board has control, then the use comes before the people, and the people can push a little bit and say, fine, you people want to have it be a parking lot for overflow? That's not what we want. You people want to have it be a garden of solar panels? That's not what we want. Anyhow,
Okay,
the select board, from my point of view, gets full control over what happens.
okay, thank you for your
Well, the
comments.
select board representing the town.
Correct.
All right, so there's another question I have that perhaps I've only implied, but I'm going to speak to the question and the answer I got from a select board member. So, as you heard, the Conservation Commission is meeting today to discuss the 13 acres. If and when the town purchases this lot, must it comply with the zoning regulations, or is the town exempt from doing so? Can you confirm? It would be helpful to know. The answer, per the zoning ordinance, the town is exempt from it.
But the town still decides what to do
But
with
the
it.
town.
Okay.
But that doesn't.
Okay, hold on. We're all for protecting and conserving and preserving. However, if the town is exempt from this and the Conservation Commission has stricter regulations, or Greenbelt is stricter, would it not make sense to,
Well, but here, you're, I think, confusing a couple of things.
Okay.
The town is not, does not subject to the zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
Okay, so the town has a piece of property. It does not have to follow the zoning that is there, okay? As a matter of law.
Mhm,
Okay. However. Town meeting, if the selectmen wanna build a. Something ridiculous there, a new fun spot or whatever, okay? You would still not be able to do that. Without town meeting approval of the funding to be
Right.
able to do it. Just because the town is not exempt or is exempt from the zoning ordinance, doesn't mean that the selectmen have carte blanche to do whatever they want. And if
Yeah.
they wanted to divide that in half and sell a portion of it to a developer to do X, Y, and Z, that also has to come to town meeting
mhm,
to sell land. That's why there's the question with the.
Yeah.
With the chapel. group again, right? The sanctuary group. Those things, that's the whole point of this, is that the town will have a say
Mhm.
in the future use of that property. I mean, that's the whole reason to go through this exercise, right?
Right, but my question still stands. If the rules for conservation or greenbelt are stricter than for the town, why not sell it to, make it greenbelt or conservation?
That can be something that we do.
That we could do that later on. We gotta own it first.
You have to
We
own,
gotta own it first. You can't,
it couldn't be in the purchase and sale agreement to say, no.
because that's not,
No.
that is a town meeting vote to redistrict it into Greenbelt. That is a town meeting
Okay,
question.
okay.
The toughest part here in this room is you're talking to everybody that's in big favor of buying that land.
Well, no.
No. No,
I was gonna
one,
say, wait a minute.
somebody's on the fence, yeah.
Okay, the majority,
Someone's on one side of the fence and everybody else.
the majority of people in this room are for buying that land. For the recreational, to preserve it. The word I like to use is preserve. You don't have to convince us.
Yeah.
What we have to do is we're talking to the town right now.
Right.
In front of this camera. It's not a closed meeting,
Sure.
so we have to answer their questions. That's what we're trying to do here. And the biggest question is, if people ask me this question,
Yep.
that means they don't really know
Okay.
what preserve means.
I think what Charles said ought to be said at the town meeting. I think you ought to get up and say exactly what you said here.
That would be great.
If,
But-
if I could do it as an individual, I could do it on behalf, of whatever the commission decides.
But we have to also speak to somebody that is not in favor, so. Is there anyone that wants to speak who's not in favor?
I'll ask some questions.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't want to look at you, but thank you.
I am not opposed to buying this land. I wish Mr. Britton would put in 100 contingencies into his sale agreement. Because if we could guarantee that we could buy this land and it would never change, it would be as it is for all of our lifetime and beyond, I would be in favor of it. What makes me nervous is, quote, in the short term, it's not going to change. For the time being, it's not going to change. And we all know that there are a million things coming down the pike, from low-income housing and solar arrays, and who knows what else we can't even think of yet that require land, and people might want to do something like that. So that's my thing, is that if this were being, I'd rather have if this doesn't go through, we launch a capital campaign for the Conservation Commission to buy it, like other towns do. That, I'm familiar with down in Massachusetts, they buy the land and they preserve it forever. But the other thing I think we need to have a little bit more transparency about is, I know the old inn is buried there or something like that. And when this came up 3 years ago, when the town passed on the purchase, because the legal advice was, don't touch that. And now 3 years later, there's this incredible urgency to buy the land. And that is just being sort of swept out the window without any real. And so I just have a concern about that, and how that might look. And I'm also sort of thinking, like, the resort so kindly gave us the pond right before the dam had to be rebuilt for $1 million. And it's just like, what might come down the pike at this land? All of a sudden the EPA says, oh, it's got to be cleaned up. And we're looking at $1 million bill to clean up the site that the town now owns or something. I don't know. This is like total speculation, but I just thought maybe it should be addressed a little.
If you look back on the old records from way back, the town was listed as the operator. And the owner of, even though they didn't own the land, the town was listed. So as far as the state is concerned, to the extent that anything was buried there back in the early '70s. The town was responsible at that point. So I don't think anything changes today because. Excuse me. Um,
And Jenny, it's been through a couple of iterations of. People looking at it from law firms to. Just. Our engineers as far as the water system is concerned. So it's a little bit different. We have not had any formal studies or anything of the property.
Mhm.
But there has been more investigation of the state records. And we have looked at it, like Bob said, we do recognize that it says Town of Waterville Valley as the operator.
Okay.
So the town has always had some exposure there. And quite frankly, as long as we're not building on it, it doesn't, there's nothing in the state files that identifies a landfill area or, a layout of a landfill or anything. So we're relatively comfortable that we're not going to have any costs as long as we don't go digging massive. holes.
in addition to that, we've read recent correspondence from, I think his name is Tom Burak,
Yeah,
who's the head of Department of
environmental
Environmental
services.
Conservation for the state. And he's been quoted in a couple of articles as saying that they closed the Farmington landfill, which was the only remaining unlined landfill in the state of New Hampshire.
Hmm.
And that's been closed, and so the state has said
That was the
there aren't
last,
anymore.
that was
Okay.
the last landfill that
And that-
they
that-
had to close.
That was about a year ago that article came out.
Yeah.
And in the Rochester paper, because it was the Farmington landfill.
And I participated in that closure just once.
And so that, the state says there's no more.
Okay,
It only took about 20 years for them to close that land.
Hmm.
So, but there were a lot of other issues.
Really?
Really want you. But yeah, there has been a lot of conversation about those concerns
Mhm.
because, your characterization was exactly correct. When they first came to us, it was like, whoa. But we have talked about it more,
and a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
and so
Okay.
we're more comfortable than we were before.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks for the word. Sorry about that.
And, what was your first point?
Just that if it could be preserved as is forever.
Well, I think
That's-
again, if the town has ownership of it, then discussions between the Conservation Commission and the Board of Selectmen, we can look at subdividing off pieces of it. If there are areas that everybody agrees this part of the land should be in conservation, or, we want to make sure that this never gets developed ever. That can be conversations we can have going forward. But you can't do that if the town doesn't know.
Right.
Does that address the questions that you have, John?
It helps.
Mhm.
I'm convinced myself, but it's
Mhm.
the amount of people that have said to me, what are we gonna do with it? First of all, we got a 42 flush coming up.
Mhm.
And we got all that money that it's gonna be going to that. Sewage treatment plant.
Mhm.
That's gonna be heavy on their mind.
Yeah.
We also have other. People asking for money for this year as well, when we go to the meeting, so. We really gotta have something really powerful to.
Mhm.
Well,
These
Convince,
people, these
yeah.
people that are questioning it.
Mhm.
To say, oh, okay, now I get it. One word gets it for me is to preserve it, just the way it is, but that's me.
So from your perspective, since you've thought quite a bit about other town folks' perspective on this, and especially from those who might be skeptical about it. What do you think would be a good response, a good answer?
The one word is preserve it. But I don't know if they get that. That's the problem. I mean, we all live in the valley for a reason, and most of it is because we want to be in the forest area. To preserve this area. And if they have to ask me that question, why are they even letting me? I don't
So
get that.
would it help for the purchase and sale agreement to have a few more details concerning preserving, protecting, etc.? Would that help? I haven't seen it, so
Well, those are the options we have if we own it, the way I see it.
to
And
purchase. and
If we
sale, yeah.
purchase the land, then we have all kinds of options on preserving it
Mhm.
or doing whatever we want to do with it. If we don't purchase it now, even though we have many big expenses, if we don't purchase it now, I don't think David is going to wait
No.
5 or 10 years until
No,
the water
so.
treatment plant is built before he
Yeah.
offers it again. Then we lose that opportunity. And we have very little say, apart from zoning regulations, about what will happen to it. That's the only way I can think of looking at it is it's to give us the option now to do with it as whatever we want in the future. And we won't have that option if it becomes privately owned by some other party.
So if this is a question of many people, maybe Brooke can speak a few words to her ideas.
Dave wants
Dave has a
to-
question.
Oh, Dave, you have a question? Yes.
If we're gonna put it in contingencies, I would say, this land must be free and open to the public.
Mhm.
I consider that the things are moving forward in that direction. However, there does not seem to me to be any tradition where the public has been canvassed to say what in fact they want. The vote to approve that sign was 26 to 25. That's a pretty small number of people who have a voice. All right, so I'm hoping that this land will be free and open to the public, and that the Board of Selectmen will use this as an opportunity to canvass the public. Not just the few people who vote,
Mhm.
but everybody who
Right.
uses.
Mhm.
I love the fishing derby. The people who are using the fishing derby don't even live here. But that's open to the public.
Yeah,
And if I could put those in, and I didn't think it would be wrong for a single property owner of short ownership duration to be given that kind of order,
Mm.
I'd put it in.
Mhm.
But I'm ready to trust the present Board of Selectmen and hope that a meeting like this is a step in the right direction of gathering up what the public wants done. And I don't think we have that tradition here. What we do have is a tradition of private ownership. And when you talk about building low-income housing, why does somebody want to bring his family into Waterville Valley and then pay $3,000 initiation to the White Mountain Athletic Club and then $1,000 to belong so that his kids can hang out with the other kids in town? So as much as possible,
Right.
free and open to the public.
right.
Thank you. Brooke, did you want to
I mean, it's not for me to decide, so these are ideas.
just ideas?
But there are a lot of opportunities with different grants that do exactly what you're talking about, David, to make it free and open to the
Oh.
public. You know, matching grants that are available to, I don't know, develop the like biking that's already there to
Mhm.
make it a little bit better with some trail signs
Right.
and I mean, I don't think really any of it should be built on anytime soon. I think the overflow parking or the hiking trails would be something that would be really needed. But not, yeah, I think it's right on the hiking trails there, so having some area where more people can park is a disaster over there.
We don't need more people, Brooke. We need more people to walk and ride their bikes.
They have to get to the valley, though, they can't walk to the valley, unfortunately.
Electricians are hard to get.
So I think that's not really having a ton of, those
Yeah.
are just my ideas, I don't get to decide though, but I do like what David's saying about, you know, open and free.
Yes,
It's a spot where people can go, you know,
Yes.
you don't have a lot of that
Yeah.
space right in town.
right.
Um,
As you said, we have the biking trails, the hiking trails already there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people have already kind of decided what's happening with that land.
Right.
They've kind of already spoken, in my opinion,
Right,
because
Mhm.
everyone is really loves that piece. And they like the way that it's being used. And I just think it, personally, it would be silly to pass up this opportunity. at,
Right.
you know,
Right.
Relatively speaking, such a small percentage of the budget.
We hear you. Any other questions, comments?
so if we were to go. If Charles was to speak for our group. And go up in front of the town,
Mhm.
are we gonna say we're in favor? Do we need to take a vote for Charles to go up and say we're in favor?
Do we need to be unanimous in order
I
to?
don't think
Do
we
it.
need to be unanimous, you just need to say,
Say-
what does the majority of the conservation
Okay.
commission
Mhm.
wanna say?
Right. Okay. All right, that way, no pressure.
No,
No pressure, but
And we-
perhaps you could draft something up and we could review it.
What he said,
What he said.
Okay.
what he said was awesome.
Yeah, what he said was great.
I've already forgotten.
yeah, we can-
It's recorded.
It's recorded, so.
We can play,
Oh, you didn't have that written down, I remember reading it, Charles, that was awesome.
It was
You'll have to go back
spontaneous,
and-
Mark.
Wow.
There you go.
all right. Thank you. So do we need to make a motion or not?
Well, before we go beyond and I try to draft something. Would we sort of. The commission itself suggest key points
Mhm.
apart from what came out of my mouth 10 minutes ago? I mean, what is it we want to stress here?
Yeah, well, to protect and preserve. Would be a couple of good words.
Can I be excused? I have an electrician that wants to meet me and
Yes,
I don't want to
Yeah.
lose him.
can't lose him. Go.
All right,
Bob.
Thank you.
you can
Thank
watch
you.
the rest of the recording.
Okay.
We're looking for good ratings, so.
Okay.
And watch out for short circuits.
Thank you, Bob.
Anything else to add to that?
Preserve, protect, keep
Jenny,
it open
anything?
and open and free. To
Open
the
and free
public.
To the public.
I think the key thing is to keep our options open by buying it. We have no options if we don't buy it.
Yeah, you can't
That's
promise
right.
anything. You can just say.
Put-
This
you
is,
could put
this would
that
be
down.
our intent to.
Intent.
I don't know. For the future.
Keep options open for the future.
Yeah,
And I do think that it's very powerful to talk about the fact that. If the town does not buy it,
Right.
and if David were to sell it to somebody else. Then what the town is faced with in the future is pretty uncertain, but given, like you said, the. Things that can be done in the recreation department, you might not personally, or in the recreational zone. That you might personally not agree with, but if they're an allowed use in the zone. Then if they follow the requirements of the zoning ordinance, they are allowed to do those things. And that list of things is pretty extensive.
Okay, a private owner
Private
would have many options
Mhm.
according to the zoning, existing zoning research
Right.
restrictions. That might not be appealing to most of the town. Or much of the town.
Right,
Anything
Yes.
else?
And it's a short-term opportunity. I don't know what the
Yeah,
time
it's
frame
not
we
gonna
have
come
is,
back.
No,
but, and David doesn't have to commit to when he wants a decision, but the opportunity is now. And waiting for the next town meeting might not be a wise move if we have
Right.
the opportunity now.
Right.
Okay, anything else?
Karen?
Okay,
and when and how do we negotiate how many acres we want to preserve for the Conservation Commission or Greenbelt? When does that happen?
after, well,
Way after.
When does
your
that
purchase,
happen? Yeah,
Well, can't negotiate anything if the town doesn't own. it.
right.
So after, at some point after
Mhm.
the closing
Yes.
between David and the town finances or approves the
Mhm.
financing as set out in the warrant article.
Mhm. Okay. Are there any other? Yes, David.
The concern is that that it's going to get voted down. It requires a 60% majority. It's not 50-50. The town meeting is projected to be unusually long and maybe quarrelsome. It's not out of the question that people will not attend because they just don't want to subject themselves to that. How are we going to turn out the vote?
Hmm.
Better than 26 to 25,
Right.
because that's not a 60% majority.
Right.
So my real concern is, here's an opportunity. And something I've been wanting to have happen for 4 years. And I think it can lose unless we get the vote out.
Right.
It's knocking on doors, I guess,
And
and
when is the deadline for absentee ballots?
This is not a ballot.
Can't.
This is
not
during the
a-
deliberative
Okay.
session.
Hmm.
It will be a written ballot. However, it is during the deliberative session. So. And it is the third item that will be talked.
Oh,
Because
that's
we
good
that's
to
good.
know.
We
Okay,
Well,
must
that's
go
good.
in order.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's gonna be the wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
And then the roads and then this.
okay,
So it will be the third item.
okay,
okay.
And right now, the moderator has indicated that we're going to discuss all three and then we will vote. Because remember, the polls have to stay open for an hour once we begin
Oh.
voting.
Oh, that's a good idea, rather than up and down and up and down.
Yes,
and down,
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, we still have to finalize that probably on Wednesday.
Mhm.
But she's indicated that
right.
we're gonna be talking through all three articles, and then we'll, just like we do every year, you'll have a little packet with color coded ballots,
Yeah.
right, with a yes or no, you check off and
Yeah.
put it in the box,
Okay,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this will be, even though it's gonna be a long meeting, it's not going to be, this question will be right up
in the
front.
beginning.
okay.
excellent.
That's the
All right.
hope. Yeah.
So
Any
you
other
still
questions?
should be kind of fresh, we're gonna, you know,
Yeah,
hit them with the big number first, John, right?
That's
We'll,
right.
Get that out of the way.
all right. So before we ask for an adjournment, can we go to non-public for 10 minutes? And come back to adjourn?
I mean, you have, yes, you can go into non-public if you have a purpose that meets the right to know law requirements. So if you're gonna talk about a legal question, if you're gonna talk about a personnel matter, which I don't think either one of those fits, I
Hmm,
guess that you don't have any Well, in this particular case, you're not purchasing land.
Mhm.
So what would be your reason for going in non-public?
Some private concerns.
The chair has a question in regards to the land
Yeah,
and with the Conservation Commission. With discussing it with the town manager. I personally think that it would be
Okay.
very quick.
Yeah.
It's up to the
So-
board. The
May
board
we?
wants to.
If you want to close this meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to close, we should adjourn and then go non-public.
Well, no, you
can't
you
do-
stop make a motion to go into non-public for the purpose of discussing whatever you want to discuss.
Right,
And then you take a vote on that.
All right.
You turn off the recording.
okay. I'd like,
And then when you come out of non-public, if you need to make a public
Mhm.
decision,
Mhm.
then we will turn the recording back on and you. can
Okay.
make a
Okay.
Motion to do that.
all right. Can I have a motion to go to non-public for 5 or 10 minutes?
Well, I don't know, that's up to the chair.
Yeah, you can stay.
Actually,
You.
Yes,
three,
This nice lady next to me.
she has to stay.
has to stay.
Yes.
Yeah.
you have to stay.
So is there a motion?
So I'll make the motion that we close the meeting to go to non-public. To discuss,
The land purchase?
Yes,
yeah,
Okay.
land purchase.
okay.
Second.
Second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I just,
Okay.
so we turn off the recording. Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Let me get off of YouTube here.
Uh-oh, what do you?